Hi everybody, this is TJR, and it's time for another segment of CD versus vinyl. And this week we're featuring the album Back to Black by Amy Winehouse. This album was originally released back in 2006. The album was a big hit with both music fans and critics. Many critics praised it for its very authentic, early Motown sound recreation. To achieve this, Amy Winehouse very wisely hired soul singer Sharon Jones's band, the Dap Kings, to recreate that sound. This album won Best Pop Vocal Album in the 50th Annual Grammy Awards. Now, I always thought that the CD sounded good. I've always liked this album a lot, but I've always kind of suspected that maybe this album was a little bit hampered by the loudness wars. Unlike some CDs where they were just slammed with compression and totally ruined, I could feel the dynamic range on this album, but I always felt that maybe the compression just needed to be backed off just a little bit more. For this comparison, I chose 4 tracks. The opening track, Rehab, the ballad, Love is a Losing Game, and the title track, Back to Black. I listened to this on both my turntable and my CD player on the home stereo. I digitized the album and then listened to the digital import from the CD and the digital import of the vinyl record on my iPhone through my car stereo and through my wireless earbuds. In both cases, I sampled the imports at the exact same rate and then did A and B back-to-back comparisons. Now, generally speaking, whenever you do this, the CDs are always going to just be louder. So, like with every comparison, I set the volume for the CD version while listening. Then, I turn it up a little bit more so that it's equal to the volume I heard it at CD when I listen to the digital import of the vinyl. So let's talk about how the tracks compared. On Rehab, I could hear a bit more space between the instruments on vinyl. They just didn't feel quite so clumped together like they did on the CD. I remember there was this percussion bell at the 10-second mark that was much more noticeable on the vinyl than on the CD, and the drum fills were also just a lot more noticeable. You could just feel them a little more. Now, on the ballad, Love is a Losing Game, I felt that this fared better on CD than Rehab did. Probably because it's a ballad, its volume is lower, so we get to hear a bit more of the dynamic range, even though they've probably compressed it a little more. Because it's just naturally a lower volume song, we just get to feel more of that dynamic range. But even still, those reverb-drenched guitar chords sounded more expansive on the vinyl, more like you're in the room hearing the guitar being played live out of an amplifier on the vinyl version than I heard it on the CD version. The next track, Back to Black, the really big difference that I could discern, both listening to it in the car and on earbuds, was the bass response. This is especially true in the car. And I'm referring to primarily the bass drum. The bass drum and the overall bass response is much more pronounced on the CD version than on the vinyl. Now, because the bass response is turned down on the vinyl, you get to feel the other instruments better, though, as a result of that. So with this particular track, it's really going to all depend on your preference. If you prefer the heavier bass response from the bass drum, then you're going to like the CD version better for this track. With these 3 comparisons, where I heard the most difference was when I played the vinyl record and the CD on my home stereo. That is where I heard the most discernible difference between the two. After that, the car stereo, and then third place comes to the earbuds, where I heard the least amount of difference, but I did hear some difference. So what's the verdict? Back to Black does sound good on CD, but the instrument tracks breathe a little bit more on vinyl. It's a slight difference. I feel like the CD is just slightly overcompressed, but it doesn't kill it. The CD is enjoyable and listenable. But if you want that little bit of extra dynamic range, the vinyl does give you a slight improvement. Now, Back to Black got a remastering for the 2007 Deluxe Cd Edition. I do not know if the compression was backed off on for this particular edition or not. If anybody's heard it and wants to make a comparison, I'd love to hear what you think. I do still feel that this album might sound a whole lot better on CD if they just backed off the compression just a little bit more, and maybe someday that will be done. But in the meantime, the CD version is still completely enjoyable. For this particular round, vinyl does win, but only by a small margin. This is TJR. Thank you so much for watching Vinyl versus CD, and looking forward to hearing what you think in the comments. Please subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.